Greetings and welcome. The year 1986 on the Strasbourg Canal and the River Rhine on the French borders. 1986 was the year that I finally arrived and got recognised as a world-class angler by the Anglian fraternity. The Strasbourg Canal and the River Rhine on the French borders, this World Championships was held on a split venue. Now, arriving on the practice length of the River Rhine was daunting because due to the size of the river and the various paces of the flow, it would sort of run very fast and then very slow, very similar to what we've already experienced when we were in Holland. And again, big ships and it was almost like a shipping canal, really. Anyway, in practice, we noticed that the fish wanted the water moving slightly, so when it moved, the fish would feed, small skimmers and vimber, a fish called a vimber. However, the water was controlled by turbines and the flow would alter throughout the day. Now, this year we'd been practicing the bloodworm, and especially back home, and finding a very good supply on a local pond. We were very confident at last in using this bait. For over the last few years, I'm getting battered by the continental teams, and anyway, we eventually, as I said, we started to learn, and we thought maybe we're getting there slowly, perhaps cracking it. Anyway, I was practicing on Roath Park Lake, and I was finding, the ways to hook the bait fast. And there was a lot of ways to do it. You could basically get a bunch of it and try and hook it that way, or you can hook it in the head. Anyway, all these methods we tried, and to find out the quickest way to hook the bloodworm. The other thing we also had to learn how to transport the bloodworm. Obviously on long distances, keeping it cool. Do we keep it in water, or do we keep it damp or dry? All these things we learned. Also scraping. I've already mentioned in the vlogs that we use homemade blades, and we managed to scrape half a gallon to up to a gallon sometimes in an hour, and using the special sieves that we designed. And we also learned mixing it with lime was always the best way of introducing bloodworm, because using ground baits, which has salt and other ingredients, seems to kill the bloodworm quite a bit. Anyway, but using lime, which really was also very difficult, because the type of lime that the continentals use, it was like a clay, and back home, it's quite rare. The nearest we could get was molehill, which was our earth. So we subsidised that and used that quite a lot. Now, I did mention earlier about innovations, and you have to be on top of your game, and you have to invent things. And this was a prime example of a match where I used a bit of an ingenuity and an innovation in a way. Because the water on the river, which was on the first day of the match, the second day was going to be on the canal. The individual was going to be on the canal. But on the water was the team event, and as I said, when the water flowed, that was when we seemed to get more bites. When it stopped, the fish, obviously wouldn't be interested. So what I designed what I call a split olivet method, and this was to combat the varying flows. So when the water was basically running through, and it was about 17 foot deep as well, so again, we couldn't use a rod line, it was the pole mainly on the river. And what I need to do is to get the bait down quickly, and obviously when the water flowed, the two what I would do is, for example, on a 1 gram olivet, I would split it with 2 half grams. To get the bulk down quickly, down in the 17 foot of water, and to catch the flow, I would obviously join them together. that would catch the flow, and they would move through the water and I would pick up fish. However, when the water slowed down, I would quickly take one of the olivettes and I would take it right up the line, so the lighter olivette down would catch the flow and there would be some movement, and that way it would produce fish, which otherwise, if you could imagine the boat being down, it would stop the flow, the natural flow. And anyway, that's how I designed it. I've got a diagram. I won't put it on the video, on the vlog, but if you want to see it, go to my Facebook page or go to my website, www.goldmedalfloats.co.uk, and you will see it on one of the pages there. Although the competition is only 3 hours long, getting the tactics right from the start is imperative, and on the team event I managed to do just that. Balling in at the start, as usual, obviously getting the right mix. It was a heavy mix of lean. I used fine coconut husks mixed with some pigeon droppings. I managed to get up the French. The French anglers were very keen on the amino acids in pigeon droppings. Anyway, whether it works or not, I don't know. But anyway, I found that the fish would settle very quickly on this mixture, ground bait. Now, as the river started to move fast, and with the current and the release of the turbines, the ground bait would move out of the swim. So no matter how stiff you balled it in. I also found that the fish would come off the bottom, and obviously, you'd have to alternate your float quite often up and down. Now, as I said, to overcome the problems, I devised a split olivette method, and the results ended up, I won my section with 17 pound 13 ounces, and I was second overall. So that was absolutely fantastic. Our team also had a tremendous result, as I said, and because obviously we've learned the bloodworm fishing by now, and we also learned pole fishing in a sense after our previous years of getting bashed. And we finished in a credible 6th place, and beating England, who just couldn't get the grips on that very difficult venue, as the change in water and the change in tactics, which was a real feather in our cap. Now, the following day, the individual event was focused on a small inland canal in Strasbourg, very similar, I suppose, to the Gloucester Canal back home, although not so deep, a lot shallower. Now, I had the fortune and the insight to visit the water before the event. As I said in a previous vlog, that we used it as a holiday period, and we went over early. We were there, obviously quite a few days before the event. Anyway, I went there with my travelling partner, Clive Roberts, and now we were walking up and down the stretch, and it looked, quite picturesque. It had floating lilies, and on the inside, and sort of little bushes dotted along the bank. And anyway, as I was walking on along, I didn't notice it, but Clive noticed a chub under the lily pads, and he said, "Come and have a look at this." And as I approached it, it disappeared. I didn't see it, so I was thinking, "Hang on, is Clive, making things up again?" Because he has a tendency to play these practical jokes. If anyone knows him, they'll know what I mean. So anyway, so I took it with a pinch of salt. Nobody's mentioned chub in the water. Sven, I think the name, the foreign name is. Anyway, nobody mentioned it, and that was that. Anyway, nevertheless, as I'd already mentioned, that if you come in the top 4 in your section on the team event, then you would automatically qualify for the individual. And again, I was the only one, unfortunately, or fortunate for me, to qualify for the event. So we had, basically had the whole team running for me in the individual event, which sometimes can be a bit of a bonus. Anyway, come the match, I drew very close to the end of the match length, a few pegs away. Not knowing enough of the water, we basically opted for the pole and blood room again because, that was the method. And again, after the initial bombardment, the competitors, they basically, balled it all in. And for the first hour, I really struggled, and that was it. I managed one single roach, and the bank runners, as I said, the team run up and down. And bear in mind, it's 120 pegs, which is a fair old distance to run. Anyway, and I was told that the fishing was a lot better on the other end of the match strength. So I thought, I'd blow my chances. So I thought. Now, thinking I needed a miracle, my friend Clive Roberts, who had been running the bank, informed me that one of the Scottish anglers, halfway along the stretch, had just caught a chub on the waggler. Now, learning my lessons from a previous match, I had set up a few wagglers on winders. Although I didn't have it set up there, I learned this lesson, as I said, from continental anglers, because they started to use our methods, and I suppose they combine that with their way of fishing, all their pole floats on winders. They started to put their wagglers and on winders too, and I thought that's a great idea, so I'll adopt that. And anyway, so I learned this, and I tell you where I actually learned it. I actually learned it on a World Club Championships when we were in Switzerland again. And what basically happened was the angler next to me was getting beat by me because I was fishing a waggler across, and I was beating him and catching small roach. And anyway, within a few seconds, he seen what I was doing, and he went into his bag and out popped a rod already made up. Something that we do these days that we never used to do then. Anyway, he was already set up, and it was like it was almost like an even float on a winder. And within seconds, he had that. He was competing with me, casting across and catching the same fish. But that was a lesson I learned. And anyway, as I mentioned, so with this in mind, I quickly got my rod and reel out. Quickly unraveled the waggler onto my rod quickly, and I thought, well, let's have a go for, let's have a go across. So I went across, started putting some knobs of sticky casters and maggots across, and guess what? I started catching. Yep. So within, I would say, a few minutes, I was into my first 12-ounce chub. I took it very slowly because I was only on a small hook at the time, and basically I got in the net, and of course that was halfway to the match. So anyway, that was it. I started then increasing the feed, as I say, sticky maggots, bronze maggots as well at the time, with casters, and as I stepped up the feed, they started to come, and I started catching these chub. They weren't huge fish, like half a pound to 12 ounces. Now I heard through the grapevine that on the other end of the stretch, the Dutchman, Ludwig, on the far end, he was winning the match by a country mile. It was a low weight, but I was told that I was catching him up, with his chub. He said, "You keep doing this, and you're gonna catch him up." So anyway, my heart was thumping, thinking, yeah, let's go for it. And at the time, I had quite a big crowd behind me. Now, this unfortunately was also to my detriment, because no sooner had all the spectators started to gather round, and there was quite a few hundred watching me. There was a bridge, as I said, just down by about 5 or 6 pegs away, and I don't know, one angler or somebody managed to climb across, and then basically started, he sat down right opposite me, and he was spooking the fish basically, because I was catching across, not realising it. And anyway, a few of the stewards shouted across, "Oi, mate, up it, you're not allowed there, you're frightening the fish." Anyway, so I kept on. It slowed up a bit then, and then the last sort of 20 minutes, they come on again. Yeah. Anyway, keeping a close eye on this situation was also the England manager, Dick Clegg. Um, Now, Dick and I, we got on quite well actually, because obviously over the last few years, I used to chat to him and the English boys, and I think in a way, he was willing me to do well, to obviously see if somebody from the UK can get into the prizes, because all the other rest of the lads had blown it like they're out of contention. But anyway, now Dick basically was behind me, was doing a bit of watching and running, and anyway, he was very good at reading the situation, and I don't know where my manager was, John Mayers. He was probably done the beer tent knowing him, but anyway, Dick was behind him, and as I say, I trusted him because he'd proved without doubt one of the best managers in the world, and whatever he said, I said I got to trust him, because he basically said, look, you're neck and neck. You probably need another fish or maybe two fish, to overtake the Dutch guy on the end peg. So as I say, I'm fishing the Wagler, and as I say, my favourite method, using my 501, by the way. Yeah, so always use that. And anyway, eventually, I think it was about last couple of minutes to go. And anyway, Dick said, look, he said, you need this fish you got on. He said, because, by the size of it, you got a chance of beating him, because it must have been about a pound and a half fish, And anyway, now Dick, out of kindness, he said, look, I'll count you down, when you got the fish, because if the fish is not in the net, by the time the whistle goes, then it don't count. So it's got to be in the net. So anyway, so Dick started counting me down as I was concentrated, and basically he said he was counting down, sort of 10, 9, 8, down to the second. And he says, you got 5 seconds to land it, Clive. He bellowed down and shouted loudly, like. I said, all right. Now, as the last gasp, I tried to land the fish. I pulled it very hard, hoping that I'd get into the net, before the whistle went. Anyway, only for it to bloody come off right at the last second. And you know what? Unfortunately, for me, the whistle did not blow for at least another 20 seconds afterwards, and which would have probably done it for me, and obviously Dick, with the deepest regret, apologized for that mistake, but he wanted to know, you can't judge things by the seconds. But I thanked him anyway, even though it probably cost me, I should have probably took my time and took a chance that the whistle would have blown after I got the net, fish in the net. But anyway, it was one of them things, and as I said, I don't hold it against him. Yeah, so anyway, when it came to the weigh-in, I registered 2.48 kilos on the scales, and Lud Weaver on the other end of the match weighed in 3.9 kilos. So I was probably beaten just by that one big fish, and that fish I lost, was it enough? I don't know. But remembering when, as a young lad, and I mentioned this in one of my earlier vlogs, that about that chub that I lost on the River Wye, the one that got away. Well, I'll put this down again to the one that got away, and it's the highs and lows of match fishing. Nobody really remembers the runner-up. It's always it's always the winner people remember. But anyway, I felt on top of the world, achieving my ambitions. Okay, I didn't quite win the World Championships this year, but I thought, hey, it's always next year, as a young chap, But I can tell you, it doesn't come that often, your chance, to be the world champion. So anyway, but I thought, well, you never know. I was on top of my game. Next year again is going to be on a river, possibly Wagler again. So I thought, yeah, say it's always next year. And I did prove a point in this World Championships that we can compete on the pole, which I did. As I say, coming second on the first day, with a big weight of 17 pound, and then obviously the following day on a canal fishing my waggler, which I was brought up with a waggler, as you know, and as I say. I had great accolades from all the French stewards there. I also had lots of press, lots of invites to, to talk about waggler fishing. And in fact, I'll tell you a little story about that next vlog, because I come synonymous with the waggler fishing, and the continental teams like Portugal and that, they used to call the waggler fishing the Branson method, so that was fantastic. But as I say, more about that next on the next vlog. Yeah, so anyway, this is a continuation from the 1986. So before I go on to the 1987 World Championships vlog, I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the 1986. It was when I arrived home, basically I was headlines in all the angling press, and it was probably due to the England team with no individual success that year. And anyway, they were all calling me the Welsh Wizard, and that was great, because it stuck with me for a while afterwards. I'll post some of the clippings on the end of the vlog, but anyway, as I said, arriving home, I was headlines, and it was during this time that things started to come together for me, as far as the fishing fraternity was concerned, because up until then I'd always sponsored myself, through my businesses. And now it was the opportunity. You see, when you win the World Championships, there's no money involved. You don't win no money. So, but what you do, you can usually get recompensed by, sponsorships and so on. And this is what started to happen with me. As I said, my first sponsor was the Aiken Fishing Line Tackle Company. Now, at the time, Bayer Line was the most popular fishing line, as far as I was aware, very closely run by, I suppose, Maxima. Anyway, that year, I also became a little bit of a celebrity in the angling field, and I was asked on many occasions to write articles. And as I mentioned once before, I mentioned one about the PMA techniques, visualization. And it was strange because, I had some funny remarks about it, but it was my belief, and and that was it as far as I was concerned. And my Cardiff Nomads club members also, they held a dinner party in honour of my success, becoming second, because I suppose that's a great achievement. And it was a surprise when they held it was like an evening dinner party, at the Angel Hotel in Cardiff, run by a chap named Neil Scott, who was the manager and also a Cardiff Nomad member at the time. So obviously, but it's a plush hotel in the centre of Cardiff. Anyway, all my friends arrived, and you know what? As a special guest, have a guest who turned up, Kevin Ashurst. Great. My boyhood hero come to, celebrate my second, my silver medal success. To me it was very special because, as I said, Kevin in the early days, now it's strange because, he went out of his way to come to visit me, on this, and, just after he had a burglary at his home, and he was tied up and robbed. What a terrible thing to happen to him. But for him to go out of his way to attend my dinner, the dinner in my honour, it was truly honoured by, the greatest angler alive, as far as I'm concerned. Always will be. Yeah, good old Kevin. Anyway, it was also, this was the next time in my life I actually talked about my beliefs about the PMA. you know, perhaps I become a little bit obsessed by it, because I even made some audio tapes, and I tried to market it, you know, hypnosis and subliminal tapes, saying become a better angler, you know. Um, I did sell a couple, but you know, I took so much stick off it. I mean, the angling press seemed to latch onto it, and my philosophy. Some tried to you know, ridicule me, you know, and I was caught out by a reporter in a covert interview when writing about me, saying my PAM was turning into PMT, you know, which wasn't very nice as far as I'm concerned. On another occasion, I was asked to hypnotise a young angler to help him fish better when doing a feature for the angling papers. Tony Skinner from Evesham. Never forget, he turned up, and you know, he's a good angler in his own right. And but whether it was the PMA sessions, whether it worked on him, I'll never know. But anyway, it was strange because I had to hypnotise him in front of the cameras, and it was, you know, he showed it in the papers. Anyway, even so, match fishing was still my main interest, and I still followed the circuit around, including Ireland and you know, say, home internationals. And as I say, 1986 was a good year, and possibly the start of my match fishing career as a semi-professional angler. As I said, I did attend many events, wrote a couple of you know, articles, and people used to recognise me wherever I'd go. So to me, that was my reward, I suppose, for all the long years of fishing international matches, and you know, knocking on the door, so to speak. Although I didn't win it, that year. As I said before, it was really at the start, because the following year, that's when it really, you know, I really sort of pulled all the stops out. But more about that on the next vlog, and just a few more pictures in the end, just to celebrate my silver medal.